Yes, welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I am recapping episode 5 of I May Destroy You. Trigger warning, this show and this review contains discussions around sexual assault and rape. So if that is a topic that you can't handle or don't want to handle, now's a great time to dip out. I promise I won't take it personally. Take care of yourself. This episode was so chaotic and manic for me. It didn't feel like one long narrative. It felt piecey, and I think that was done intentionally because I was reading a review from a writer on Vulture, and they were saying that healing from trauma is not a linear process. And I think we can all, if you think back to any traumatic incident that has ever happened to you, coming to terms with it, healing from it, all those things, it doesn't happen in this like step-by-step kind of like ladder, or just, you know, it doesn't happen linear. You may wake up one day and feel like your old self and like the world is your oyster and you can take on anything and you're the next Beyonce, and the next day you may not want to get out of bed. And then the next week you may feel like you're a new normal, not even back to your old self. You're a whole brand new bitch bussing, you know. That's how it happens in real life. There isn't, you wake up one day and all of a sudden, you know, you're healed forever. You never know what could like trigger you or take you back to a place. But I think right now Arabella is leaning really hard into the self-care aspect of healing. And, you know, she wakes up with Zane and does this yoga practice, and of course she's still an influencer, so much like any of the rest of us, she needs to record it and put it on her social media. And you see her like trying really hard to just be like upbeat, you know, and not sink into the abyss of her trauma. So she listens to a podcast, relatable content. I love a good podcast, especially while I'm getting my day started. One of the podcasts that she listens to, she learns that there is a thing where men intentionally violate you by removing a condom while having sex, and then they gaslight you to make you think it's not a big deal, where they say verbatim what Zane said to her, and she has these flashbacks where she's realizing maybe this was intentional. Maybe he intentionally violated me. This is his MO, and this is just like what he does. And she just leaves. And there was something really powerful to me about that scene of her just like getting up and leaving and walking down the street with no pants on and no shoes. And, you know, she goes into a store to get, you know, actual clothes to wear, but there was something about the way she was walking down that street where I think she was just very in her head. And I don't know, that scene was really powerful for me, but I think it had me wondering, what did he do this intentionally? Is this just like how he gets to have unprotected sex with people, or did he really genuinely not think that there was anything wrong with what he did? And I think that's kind of a central idea that they're exploring in this episode. So Arabella goes to the hair salon, and this is so funny because I remember when I cut my hair, several people asked me if I did it because I was heartbroken over a dude, and I was just like, I just always wanted to experience short hair. Like, no. But that is a thing, that it's a trope, but it is a thing that some people do, where when they want to reclaim their body, they want to reclaim themselves, they want to reclaim their lives, or maybe they're starting on a natural hair journey, they just cut off all their hair. And I think it was an appropriate, you know, action for what Arabella is doing. She wants to just reclaim herself. She wants to regain some semblance of control. And when you're dealing with all this other stuff going on, ain't nobody got time to be doing no hair. Ain't nobody got time to be worried about your wig tape or however wigs work. I'm gonna be real, I do not know how wigs work, but whatever. I think it was a great option for her. And I'm sorry, just as an aside, to break the fourth wall, Michaela Cole has excellent facial features and she never needs to have hair. Just her bone structure, like, she never needs to have hair, honestly. Like, that's a face. Anywho, so she gets the call from her literary agents that they want her to come into the office. So you can kind of see she's not really getting a real break from this book deal. And we learn at this meeting that she told them that she was raped. They know that she was raped, and the way that they helped her or supported her was to get her a therapist and to get this guy, Zane, to help her. And I guess it's like, it didn't occur to them that if this woman has just been raped, maybe she wouldn't be comfortable with a male counterpart. Just nobody cared enough to think about or to support her in a real way, which I think is actually indicative of what happened to Michaela Cole in real life when she was writing the second season of Chewing Gum. There was not a whole lot of support, and that pissed me off. Even more so because, you know, the head bitch in charge, Susie Hennessy, I'm sorry, that name is really funny to me, but, you know, Arabella was so excited that she was a black woman, but all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Because when she revealed to this woman that she had been raped, she was just like, oh, I want to hear that story. And it's like, fuck off. How do you not feel anything for her? How do you not want to make sure that she's okay? Or, you know, your first instinct is like, how can we make some money off of that story? Like, get the fuck out of here. I felt incredibly disappointed on her behalf, because that is what it's like when you walk into a space where you're the only black person and you see another person who looks like you expect or desire for there to be some sense of camaraderie, and when that doesn't happen, it is a huge letdown. So I was just like, fuck her. I really hated that woman. Turns out her assistant, the white girl, ended up being more of an ally, but we'll get there. Arabella also goes to the police station with T and Kwame, where they learn that there is a possible suspect. There's a partial DNA match. Simon and his cousin, whatever, they're cooperating and submitting DNA samples, and I'm wondering what that friendship is going to look like after this, especially because Arabella kind of hinted that Simon might have had something to do with it. This is where she's forced to admit that she has not told Biagio, asshole, about her assault, and that she now has to. And in having this conversation with the detectives, where she's trying to, again, be like really upbeat about things, but this is also like some really traumatic shit, so it feels manic again. She confirms with the detective that in fact it is rape for a person to take a condom off, and the detective says, you know, people don't report things that they don't know are crimes, which kind of piqued Kwame's ear. And once again, y'all know Kwame's my favorite character. I was so devastated for him that he made the decision to report his assault and he was not supported at all. And it's already hard enough for women to report sexual assault because people just automatically assume that you were somehow wrong. People automatically assume that there was some sort of misunderstanding or something like that, and you get gaslighted. So I was really happy that Arabella had these really helpful, empathetic, and understanding detectives to help her, but men don't really get that. And something that I meant to touch on in the previous video about Kwame, I hate that men, gay, straight, or otherwise, are expected to welcome any kind of sex. I know a lot of men who have revealed to me that they have basically been raped, been sexually assaulted, and these are heterosexual men, but it was just so normalized that, you know, you're a man, you're supposed to want whatever kind of sex comes your way. And it's just like, well, no, she violated you. You didn't want that. But they're socialized to, you know, across the board, it's just, oh, boys will be boys, and men are not these uncontrollable animals who have no say so over their sexual desires. It's not fair. This is where patriarchy brings everyone down, because it's not fair to tie a man's masculinity to his ability to get sex from anyone. But, speaking heteronormatively, it's not fair that you make a man's manhood contingent upon how much sex he can have, because then that means that in order for him to prove that he's a man, he needs to go out and do that at the expense of women's bodies, whether they give consent or not. And then on the flip side of that, when and if something does happen to them that they're not comfortable with, that they don't welcome, that they don't want, they're looked at like they're crazy, because it's just like, well, I mean, didn't you get to have sex? And it's just like, but it's not sex I wanted. So I think there is a thimbleful of privilege in at least being a woman reporting a sexual assault. Kwame did not get even a fraction of the support that Arabella got. He was in there with only one detective who was visibly uncomfortable. And again, skin folk ain't kinfolk. Yes, it was a black man, but this man was obviously visibly uncomfortable discussing the inner workings of dating or sex, between men. And it's like, if y'all don't want to have a specialist to discuss this stuff with him, at least get someone who's familiar with the community so that he's not having to over explain so much. And he was just completely discouraged. And even like the woman who walked through and was like, are you okay? And he was like, yeah, and kind of wanted to have a conversation. She was like, honey, I was just checking. Like, and it's just like, well, shit. I felt devastated for Kwame, because he doesn't have the support. He can't tell his family because they're not accepting of him being gay. He's been marginalized completely, and I'm devastated for him, because he hasn't even told his friends that this happened to him. And then the dude also blocked him on Grindr, so it's just like, that nigga knew he did something wrong. Again, my heart continues to break for Kwame, because he's not gonna get any justice for what happened to him. Moving along. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, y'all. Because like I said, this episode was chaotic for me, so I had to take a lot more notes than usual just to make sure I got everything in. Arabella's literary agents tell her, even though she reveals, that she experienced a super traumatic thing, they want her to do a reading at this summit. She keeps having these Freudian slips where she's calling Zane a rapist. And even when they have this one-on-one, where she's painting and he's having, he's like, why didn't you tell me that you were raped? And he seems really distraught by the fact that she was raped, as if he didn't do the same thing. And that's what I'm just like, does he not know that what he did was rape? But then he starts to look really guilty, and, his body language is like, well, shit, maybe I did something wrong, in violating her. You can't tell. It's like, it's subtext, like they said on the at the summit. I think that there was like something kind of meta about them saying subtext with regard to that relationship, because the assistant to Susie Hennessy, I think her name was Sion, makes mention that this is kind of like, there's something not too savory about Zane. And I think that also pushed Arabella to do what she ultimately ended up doing, which was putting him on blast about being a rapist. She very clearly, overtly said that he was a rapist. And I know for me personally, because it's like, well, why was she at his apartment and like thanking him for helping her out, and like, why isn't she saying anything to him? Again, healing is not linear. The person who violated me was someone who I had a relationship with. I'd ended that relationship, but we, were still around each other, and he violated me in a way where I was not conscious. And I tried to talk to friends who I trusted about it, and they gaslit me, was just like, well, I mean, he probably thought that it was okay because y'all had, like, you know, slept together before, and, you know, like, made these excuses for him. And it took me a really long time to acknowledge or accept that that was a huge violation. And I had even hung out with him afterwards because I just did not know. I let other people convince me that it wasn't that big of a deal, even though I knew I didn't feel right about it. And so to me, it doesn't look so bizarre for her to, like, still, you know, spend time with him or express gratitude towards him, because she's still grappling with whether or not this was intentional. And I had kind of the same thing. Like, was this person trying to take advantage of me? What was the subtext, you know? And that does take time to come to terms with. It wasn't until I think I moved here that I talked to a friend about that, and she was just like, you do know that, like, that wasn't okay, like, that you were assaulted, right? And I was like, I guess, you know. And it was years after the fact, because no one had validated that for me or affirmed for me that what he did wasn't okay. So just to give you a little bit of, like, real life, it's not uncommon, because again, healing is not linear. And then especially when, I know back then we just weren't having as many conversations about the nuances of consent and assault. So I really didn't know back then. I didn't have the language or the knowledge to speak on, you know, what happened to me. So I also need to know, what was up with T this episode? I was surprised that she got stage fright. I was surprised that she seemed to care once Arabella told her what Zane did, but she also seemed to be really focused on herself as well. She was very self-absorbed this episode, and I found it really confusing. I don't know what to make of T this episode. It was strange. Maybe she's trying to help Arabella feel more normal. I don't know, but something wasn't right about her. So after Arabella calls Zane out for being a rapist at this summit, it goes viral because that's what things do. And Arabella's getting all this support from all these different women. But just like with anything with social media, that gratification is so short-lived because you always have to be in real life. So she has to now tell Biagio what happened to her. And we got to pull up on bruh. Like, that was absolute worst case scenario of, if you tell someone that something happened to you, that's the worst possible thing that they can do, is to make you feel like it was your fault. This is also why I want for us to have more conversations with men and women about consent and about being safe. As a woman, we're taught so many things to do to avoid getting raped, but men aren't taught as much about not being rapists, if that makes sense. So if something happens to you, then it becomes your fault. Then it becomes, well, why were you walking home so late? Or that's where victim blaming comes from, because women are just expected to be, I don't know, like, we're supposed to just know Krav Maga or some shit and just, like, know how to fight men off. And we're supposed to always be 100% sober and never walk home alone after the sun goes down. These are all things that, like, yeah, if you want to operate in the world as it is and not as it's supposed to be, sure, do your best. But like I said in the previous video, statistically, most sexual assaults happen with someone you know. That's how it happened with me. That was someone I knew for a really long time that I'd had a relationship with. Sometimes you could do everything right and it could still happen to you. But we have to stop putting the onus solely on women to avoid sexual assault and also charge men with not doing it. Why isn't that more of a conversation? And the way that he said that she was ruining his life because he now has to go get to the police station and give a DNA sample, and he's a drug dealer, and da-da-da. And it's just like, you don't care at all what happened to her. I hate him. I want to go fight him. We got to pull up on bruh. Like, what the hell? How do you make her rape about you? And I mean, I always sensed that he was a dick, but this just like confirmed it in a way that I wanted to fight. I still kind of want to fight. Like I said, I found this episode manic and chaotic, and but like I said, I think that was supposed to be reflective of Arabella's mind state, where she's going back and forth between these moments of clarity and enlightenment through, doing this yoga practice, but then also having these Freudian slips and cutting her hair. And, she's very like about everything. That's really creepy. It gave me like Joker vibes. Like when she talks to people about it, she gets a little bit, jokery about it. And I think it's just, again, her working things out. So the point of this episode, I think, is healing is not linear. Do not victim blame. And there needs to be more support for men who are victims of sexual assault. I don't care if it's gay men. I don't care if it's straight men. I don't care if it's cis men. I don't care if it's trans men. We need to stop with this just overarching idea that men want whatever kind of sex comes to them, and there needs to be more support for different kinds of victims, I guess is the point. So we'll see what happens next episode. Just FYI, I did start a Patreon, so if you guys want to support me as viewers, sign on to my Patreon. I'm putting a link in the episode description. Coming up with some more fun tiers of ways that you guys can be a part of my creative process. So if you want to support me, help me out, shoot me a little money, I appreciate it. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so drop down in the comments and we'll talk about it. Thank you guys for joining me again, and see you next week. Bye.